Hello, and welcome to the Misty Morrison podcast. I'm your host, the wonderful Misty Morrison. So, let me tell you a little bit about the podcast. Here on the Misty Morrison podcast, we have 3 different segments. We have Was I in the Wrong, which was our initial launching segment, where I read Reddit stories and give my opinion. It's mostly Am I the Asshole type stories, where people are either asking if they acted appropriately in a situation that's already passed or asking how to deal with a current situation. The next segment that we have is Petty Please, where we read stories of pettiness, entitlement, kind of Karen behavior. And then we also have What the Fluff, where I read stories. A lot of the stories will be from, tales from the front desk, tales from retail, tales from customer service, tales from tech support, those kind of stories, just where it's just unbelievable the way that people acted. So that is basically what the podcast is. I read the stories, give my opinion. While this is available in audio format, podcast only, or video on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below with your judgment on the stories or your advice. If you are listening on podcast, you can comment on socials. You can find me at Misty Morrison Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I post twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We do post more Was I in the Wrong than we do of Petty Please and What the Fluff. So that's mostly the content that we have. And most of our episodes, we aim for the 20 to 30 minute mark for episodes. So it's not super short, but it is still easy to digest. Maybe it can get you through your morning or afternoon commute. I also have my own subreddit, r/Misty Morrison Podcast, where you can submit your own stories to be read on the podcast. I always try to remember to put the link to the original stories on Reddit in the description box below in case you guys would like to read the original story for yourselves, or even better, leave a comment for the original poster or OP. If you are watching on YouTube, please go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. It helps the channel grow. And if you are listening on podcast, go ahead and leave a 5-star review if you like the content. That is our introduction, so let's get into the stories. Here we go. For our first story, Am I the Asshole for Ruining a Child's Life? Today, I started talking to an American mother while in A&E, and her child was interested in the artwork I have on my leather jacket, as it's pretty colorful. The mother mentioned that her daughter's name was Grain, so I assumed for a while that she was another mother who wanted something special to call her child. I remarked that it was a unique name and that I'd never met anyone called Grain before. She told me that she's named after her great-grandmother and that it's an Irish name. At this point, the alarm bells are ringing in my head because I've realized that the kid is called Grain, generally pronounced as Gronu or thereabouts. I tried to be very tactful and I was like, Irish has such an interesting alphabet. How is her name spelled? Irish names can be tricky. The child is called Grenu, not Green. My partner, who has studied Ireland's political history as part of their dissertation and also the Irish diaspora and its culture around their university city, is stuck somewhere between stifling a laugh and dying of embarrassment on her behalf. So I come up with what I thought was a very positive reply. I said, an old school name and a more modern pronunciation. I think that's a great way to pick names. I would like to point out that I do not like the name Grain for a child, nor do I like the way the pronunciation was butchered, but I was trying to be tactful and positive. She asked what I meant, and I said, well, in Ireland they typically pronounce it like Gronu. Her face went red and said that I shouldn't have said that the pronunciation was wrong in front of the kid because now she's going to grow up knowing her name is wrong and feel bad about it. I apologized for causing offense and restated that it's a lovely name in both ways and a fantastic nod to her heritage. I said that I'm sure her great-grandmother would be thrilled to be honored by her name being used. I was throwing out just about every positive reinforcement that I could think of, but to be frank, she was pissed off. She told me that I ruined her daughter's self-esteem and that her life was ruined by me saying that her name was pronounced atypically. Grain, for context, was around 2 years old and completely unbothered by the conversation until her mother got angry at me. She was just looking at the pictures on my jacket. The conversation was maybe 5 minutes long, but I managed to ruin the kid's life. Hindsight says I should have kept my mouth shut and waited for somebody else in the city to say something. So, am I the asshole? Edit spelling and syntax. Edit 2, some people have assumed that we're in the USA, we're in the UK. In a city with lots of Irish people, an Irish centre, and a great Irish folk scene. So for that one, definitely the OP is right. I don't think they really did anything wrong by, trying to make polite conversation when these people were choosing to talk to him about his jacket. It didn't work out great, but also the OP had good intentions. And yeah, that was just somebody choosing to get upset about something really simple, and the OP didn't do anything wrong. So for story number 1, OP was right. Story number 2. Am I the asshole for kicking my brother and his new wife out of my mother's house after they tried to redecorate my dead daughter's room while I was at work? Initial reaction, no, definitely not wrong. But let's see how the story changes my mind. So this is still pretty fresh, and I'm absolutely fuming. For context, I, 38 female, lost my daughter 2 years ago in a car accident. She was only 14, and ever since that day, I've kept her room exactly as she left it. I don't go in there often, but just knowing that it's there, untouched, brings me comfort. It's like having a piece of her still here with me. Her posters, her art supplies, her clothes, all of it is still there. I can't bring myself to change it. Now, fast forward to a few months ago, my brother, 34 male, and his new wife, 29 female, had some financial issues after blowing a ton of money on a ridiculous, extravagant wedding. They asked if they could stay with me while they saved up for a place. Even though I wasn't thrilled about it, I agreed because, well, family, right? At first, things were fine, until recently. I noticed my sister-in-law making comments about how I shouldn't keep a shrine, and how it's time to move on. I ignored her because, frankly, it's none of her damn business how I grieve my child. My brother mostly stayed quiet, but I could tell she was getting into his ear. Anyway, I came home from work last week to a literal nightmare. I walked into my daughter's room, and I kid you not, they had taken down all her posters, boxed up her stuff, and had started repainting the walls a hideous beige. They had moved in a bunch of generic furniture, hung up new curtains, and were apparently turning it into a guest room. I lost it. Screaming, crying, the whole thing. I asked them what the hell they were thinking, and their response? My sister-in-law had the nerve to tell me they did it as a favor to help me move on because it was unhealthy for me to keep the room as it was. I was shaking with rage. I told them to pack their stuff and get the hell out of my house immediately. My brother tried to calm me down, saying they meant well and were only trying to help me let go. He even tried to make me feel guilty by saying they had nowhere else to go right now, as if that would make me suddenly forgive them for destroying the last piece of my daughter I had left. I told them I didn't care, and that they had crossed an unforgivable line. Now my whole family is divided. My parents think I'm overreacting and say I'm being heartless for kicking them out. They keep saying, they were just trying to help, they didn't mean any harm, and that I'm being too harsh because people grieve differently. They're even suggesting I apologize and let them move back in. My brother is still texting me, asking me to reconsider, saying they're in a tough spot, but all I see when I look at him is betrayal. So, am I the asshole for kicking them out and refusing to even consider letting them back in after what they did? Oh, hell no. No. That's horrible. So, OP for this story is definitely not the asshole. She is completely right. That was such a horrible thing for anyone to do and completely crossed every line, every boundary. I can't imagine in what world someone would think doing something like that would be okay. Story number 3. Am I the bad apple for telling my mom it's not my responsibility to parent my younger siblings? I, 18 female, live at home with my parents and 3 younger brothers. I am about to graduate high school later this year, so I've been saving up money to afford going to college. I recently landed a job as a custodian at an elementary school to help me save, and I've been loving it so far. I've been a substitute custodian for the past 2 years, which, for those who don't know, is basically like a substitute teacher but for janitors. So I already know how to do the work, but this is the first time I've landed an actual permanent position doing this stuff. My boss and coworkers are super nice, and the job itself is fairly easy. It's great. Earlier this week, however, I got a call from one of my younger brothers, 14 male, while in the middle of work. I answered his call, and he began to tell me that nobody has picked him up from school yet. He tried calling my mom, but she never answered, and my dad is at work. At this point, it had been almost an hour since school got out, and he said he was just waiting outside the school, unsure of what to do. So I told him that I was at work and couldn't leave to go pick him up since work was about 25 minutes away from his school, but I would try to see what I could do. I started calling my mom as well, but she never answered me either. I stood there trying to get a hold of her for what seemed like an eternity until she finally picked up. I informed her the situation and told her that she needs to go pick up my brother, and she agreed, though sounding a bit annoyed. When I came home from work, she immediately questioned about why I couldn't pick my brother up from school today. I told her that I can't just leave my shift at work and go grab him, and how I didn't see an issue as to why she couldn't go pick him up, as getting to his school is about a 7-minute drive there and back. She told me she wasn't actually at our home, but at her friend's house down the street. She stated that she was able to drop my 2 younger brothers, 8 male and 11 male, at their friend's house after school, and this finally gave her the opportunity to hang out with her friends, since she was kidless for a moment. I told her that's fine that she wants to go hang out with her peers, but she's still the parent of my 14-year-old brother, and it's her responsibility as his mother to pick him up and to not leave him at the school for an hour alone. She started to blow up in my face, telling me how terrible I am for accusing her of being a bad mother, and how, as his older sister, I should have picked him up from school. She started going off about how this is the first time in a while she's been able to hang out with her friends, and how she really needed that time alone, and how I ruined it by not taking my brother home. I started arguing back, saying that while I do love and care for my brother, I reiterated that he is not my child, and that it is not my job to pick him up from school. Things got pretty heated, and she hasn't talked to me since. Was I the bad apple? Edit. I see some people are confused on how the janitor thing works. Being a substitute janitor / permanent janitor doesn't get in the way of anybody's schooling. I work after school gets out, like most janitors do, regardless of if they're in a school or not, because it's very difficult to clean a school when there are kids in it, especially because I work at an elementary school. So everybody's shift starts after school gets out, and all the kids are gone. The area I've been assigned to clean usually takes me roughly 2.5 to 3 hours to complete, which is not that long at all. So unless you're the head custodian, my boss, who will stay there during the school day, you show up after school already gets out since it's easier that way. Another edit. A lot of people are asking why my brother didn't walk home. It's a 7-minute drive to the school, meaning like a 1-hour walk. This is his first year as a freshman in high school, and I think he felt a little intimidated by the thought of walking a distance and route he's never walked before. I also think that he was just under the impression that somebody was going to pick him up. They were just late, and he didn't want to leave the school if somebody was on their way, since that would create more of a hassle for the person picking him up. So OP is not the asshole. It sounds like the mother didn't have a plan in place for what was going to happen with the 14-year-old brother when she didn't come to get him. I would feel differently if there had been a prior conversation and the mom had been like, hey, I have this plan after school. I can take the 2 younger ones to their friends' houses, but can you help me out and get your brother? That would be a different situation, but it doesn't sound like that's what happened. It sounds like the mom just left to do her own thing and took it on faith that the oldest sibling would just know to go pick up that brother. which was clearly not the case. They didn't know anything was wrong until the brother called, and he's like, hey, no one's come to get me yet. So yeah, the mom is completely in the wrong here. The original poster is right, because it was not their responsibility and there was not a plan in place prior to the event. And planning ahead is always a good thing. Story 1 was from r/Am I the Asshole? Story 2 was from r/AITA. Story 3 was from r/Am I the Bad Apple? Okay. Story 4. Am I the asshole for bringing my daughter to a child-free wedding? Hi everyone. I'm a 19-year-old mom to my beautiful 2-year-old daughter, Amelia. Just a bit of backstory. Last year, I was asked to be a bridesmaid in a family friend's wedding. I was thrilled and immediately said yes, even though it was a child-free event. I had arranged for a babysitter about a week before the wedding. But about a week before the wedding, she informed me that she would no longer be in the city and couldn't watch my daughter. Given the short notice, I approached the bride and asked if I could bring Amelia to the wedding, as I didn't have time to find another trusted babysitter. My daughter is overall a very easygoing baby. She's comfortable with people and happy as long as she's fed. The bride knew this since she'd watched my daughter on multiple occasions before, and she happily agreed, saying that having Amelia there would make the wedding photos even more special. The wedding was going smoothly, though I noticed a few stares from the groom's parents. Amelia stayed with my sisters for most of the day, but during the reception I took her with me to congratulate the couple. As I approached with Amelia in my arms, the groom's mother suddenly commented, "You shouldn't have brought a baby to a child-free wedding, especially when she doesn't fit the family." I was completely taken aback. For context, my daughter is mixed. I'm half white and half Hispanic, and her father is black. I've been called whitewashed because I'm not in contact with my Hispanic family, so I knew exactly what she meant by saying my daughter didn't fit the family. The bride looked shocked, and the groom immediately stood up and led his parents away. Taking this as my cue, I decided it was time to leave. I made the rounds to say goodbye to everyone and put Amelia in her stroller. As I was leaving, the bride came over to apologize for her in-laws' behavior. I was upset, but I knew it wasn't her fault, so I simply wished her luck and left. Now, about a week after the wedding, I got tagged in a Facebook post. Strange, because I don't use Facebook. The post read, "I'm outraged that my grandchildren weren't allowed at this event, but when a teen mother who couldn't be responsible enough to leave her child with the father brings her baby, it's perfectly fine." The post was from the groom's mother. To make things worse, she's also been telling family members that I'm lying about what she said regarding my daughter's appearance. So now I'm wondering, am I the asshole? Update. Hi again, everyone. I first want to start off with a huge thank you for all the advice and reassurance. That said, before I go into this post, I've seen a few racist comments toward my daughter and remarks about my age and how I ruined my life. I am extremely happy, and so is my daughter. She is beautiful, and it is terrible that people in this world will take their self-hate out on a 2-year-old. Anyways, I want to give an update and clarify a few things after reading the feedback I received. First off, I do have a Facebook account, but I don't use it often. I only find out about the post because someone sent it to me on messages, which is how I saw the groom's mother's comments. Regarding Amelia's father, he couldn't take her that weekend because he lives a bit farther away and struggles when plans change last minute, especially when it's not his scheduled days to have her. On top of that, my family members who I would trust to watch Amelia were all attending the wedding, so there weren't many other options. Now, some of you mentioned I could have dropped out of the wedding, and I want to address that. Dropping out of the bridal party was actually the first option I presented to the bride when I realized I couldn't find a new babysitter. I didn't want to complicate her big day. However, she didn't want me to drop out and reassured me that it would be fine to bring Amelia. So, while bringing my daughter was the second option, the bride did have the choice of me stepping down if she had preferred that. Yesterday, I spoke with the bride again, and she told me that she explained everything to her mother-in-law, making it clear that it wasn't my fault Amelia was there. It was a decision made between her and her husband. She also revealed the real reason behind the child-free rule. It wasn't directed at all kids. The bride had been trying to avoid having her mother-in-law's grandchildren there because they had been nightmares at other events. as described by the bride herself. The bride didn't want to cause any more drama by openly sharing that reason, so she kept it under the radar. I feel a lot better knowing that my friend still supports my decision, and I'm relieved that the real issue wasn't about me or Amelia. While I'll definitely be more cautious with similar situations in the future, I'm glad I prioritized Amelia's safety and well-being. Thanks again to everyone who shared their thoughts. I truly appreciate it. Okay, that was kind of a longer one, but OP is right, and that mother-in-law is horrible. I mean, had she not communicated with the bride, that would be a different story, but knowing that she gave the bride all the options, she wasn't just like, well, I can't find a sitter, so I'm bringing her. She, had the option of stepping down or bringing her and fully explained her situation, and the bride was very understanding, excellent bride, really cared about her friend and having her there. And so the bride and the husband made an informed decision. Mother-in-law of the groom is absolutely crazy for taking it upon herself to make that post when she didn't have the full story. So really glad that the bride stepped up for her friend and further explained the situation. Yeah, the bride and the groom and OP handled it so well. So yeah, that was a good one. OP was right. Moving on. Let's see. I've got a few options here. It doesn't look like I have any more kid-focused ones. So, okay, from r/am I the asshole for story number 5. Would I be the asshole if I walk away from helping my family? Initial reaction, don't really have one for that one. That one's really short title, kind of open-ended, so let's see. I, 47 female, and completely fed up with my family's bullshit. I am divorced and almost done raising my kids. The youngest turns 18 next month. My mother is disabled but lives alone. She is terrible with money. This plays into the overall issue. My sister Liza, 42 female, has recently been divorced and has moved home from out of state. Liza has over the past few years been consistently getting worse in her overall mental health. She attacked her ex-husband, which ultimately ended the marriage. He has full custody of her 3 kids. She has become a hermit, doesn't bathe, her house is filthy, garbage stacked 2 feet high on the countertops, and she refuses to work. She is having episodes of delusions. She believes she is a CIA operative, was kidnapped from the royal family, and is a true princess. The money she received from her divorce is gone, and next week, the last of her inheritance from my father is gone. She refuses to let Mom help her, as that is the person she claims has kidnapped her. Mom is not financially able to help her. I help pay my mother's bills, because she is so terrible at money. Now my sister will lose her home. The one I helped her get, she paid, I did paperwork. She will be losing her car, and her light bill is due. Everyone in my family expects me to help her and Mom. I am the only one who is in a financial shape to help. I took my part of the inheritance and purchased 2 rentals, plus paid off my home and car. I draw a decent amount of pay from my job, but I am by no means rich. If I didn't pay out to help my mom and my sisters so much, I would be decently comfortable financially. From the backstory, you should see my overall issues with my family. I am expected to clean my sister's home. I've been asked to pay for the car and the light bill, plus all groceries for her home. After next month, her lot rent is due. If I added it all up, it's about $1,200 a month. We have called crisis team out twice on my sister, and they can't legally make her go into an institution because the law states that she must be harming herself or others. I am trying to get my sister on disability, but she refuses to cooperate. She claims she isn't crazy and that the Bible states the government must give her money to live. So, would I be the asshole if I just walked away from everyone? I'm at my wit's end. I have no peace in my life. I have no life outside of what my mom and Liza need. I am just done and wouldn't mind a padded room myself at this point. That's really sad. I feel bad for OP. I think she has incredible intentions. I think she's really trying to help her mother live a decent life. I do think OP has really enabled her mother. I think the best thing she could have done, like, over these years, rather than just stepping up and helping, would have been, yes, help if you're able, but also, like, get her some financial literacy courses, set her up with a financial advisor, something to help her learn those skills so that she could manage money better and could potentially, over time, be able to afford her own living independently. As far as the sister goes, that's a lot. I mean, I think she's done the right thing because she did say that she called the crisis team out to try to help her. But of course, depending on where you are, the crisis team or, family services, whatever that looks like in your area, they cannot intervene as long as the people are not living below the standard of living. And depending on where you are, the standard of living is very low. Like, I know areas where the standard of living is they don't have to have running water and they can have dirt floors, and that is within the standard. And it sounds like in this particular area, if they're not hurting anybody, it's fine. If they're not hurting themselves, it's fine. It sounds like to get like state or, government help, she would probably have to let that electric bill be shut off to where, the cleanliness situation became even worse where it was a health hazard, and maybe then she could get intervention that way. But I absolutely do not believe it is her responsibility to step up and not only be helping her mom, but also help the sister to the tune of $1,200 a month. That's a lot for anyone to take on, and I want to know why the rest of the family isn't helping, why they just expect this one person to help. So OP is in the right. She is completely right for feeling that she wants to step away from her family at this point. I don't blame her for that at all. I feel like there's only so much you can do for people, and if you've reached your end, that's fair. That is completely fair. You have every right to walk away whenever you feel ready. So that is our 5 stories for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 1 of Was I in the Wrong? We'll be back on Thursday with another new episode. Until then, if you like the content, be sure to subscribe. If you are listening on a podcast platform, please leave a 5-star review to help the channel grow. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.